Many NFL teams have identities or specific playing styles that completely define how they approach the game of football. For the Miami Dolphins, their identity is speed. Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins are constantly adding speed in every area of the field and have created one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. Led by Tyreek Hill, who is potentially the fastest wideout in the league, McDaniel's scheme guarantees mismatches across the board, producing open wide receivers at an alarming rate. But can speed alone actually deliver the Dolphins a Super Bowl? Let's break it down. Of course, as I already mentioned, the fastest player on the fastest team in the NFL is none other than Tyreek Hill. Hill's game-breaking speed combined with his ability to stop on a dime simply isn't fair. Even if a defender manages to keep up with him, which rarely happens anyway, Hill is still probably going to come down with the ball. Last season, Tyreek was the best wideout in football, leading the NFL with 1,799 yards and 13 receiving touchdowns, which was good enough to make him the highest graded receiver according to PFF. And if that wasn't enough for defenses to deal with, Miami also has arguably the best wide receiver 2 in the NFL, Jalen Waddle, who hauled in 1,000 yards of his own despite missing a few games last season. If there were any questions about Waddle's speed, there shouldn't be, because he ran a 4.37 second 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. Both of these guys truly have the complete package. They can fly by a defense, or they can beat you at the catch point, and they can break tackles, or they can simply just run away from defenders. To put it plainly, trying to figure out how to match up against these two guys keeps defensive coordinators up at night. While Miami is better known for their speedy wideouts, their running backs might be just as fast, if not faster. Even at age 31, Raheem Mostert posted almost 1,200 yards and a league-leading 21 touchdowns last season, and is still constantly tracking the fastest on-field speeds of any player in the NFL, often reaching over 22 miles per hour. His counterpart, Devon Achane, was right there with him in his rookie season and ran an identical 4.32 second 40-yard dash to Mostert's at the NFL Combine. Although Achane missed significant time last year, when he was on the field, he was pure dynamite at every snap. Achane led the NFL in yards per carry by a long shot with a ridiculous 7.8 yards a tug, and was consistently breaking off field-flipping runs every game. If either of these guys gets to the edge, you can go ahead and move the chains, because they have to be tackled head-on. No one is catching them from behind, especially with both of them trading off carries, meaning the next guy is always fresh and ready. It would be fair to think that those kinds of jets are already enough to power an offense. However, Dolphins staff clearly disagree. They're constantly looking to continue adding speed wherever they can, and the most recent addition is Tennessee running back Jalen Wright, who the Dolphins traded a 2025 third-round pick for to select in the 4th round. Wright had a 93 athleticism score at the NFL Combine, the second best of any running back in the entire 2024 class, and it shows. His explosiveness and breakaway speed on tape as of all looks eerily similar to Achane last year in Miami, and while his role in the upcoming season is still unclear, any usage he gets is sure to pay big dividends for Miami. Wright also thrives when getting to the edge, which is why he is sure to excel in Mike McDaniel's stretch run scheme, also adding a useful ability to make plays as a receiver. At Tennessee last season, Wright had over 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns, even with a down year for the team as a whole. Despite the fact that Mostert is still playing extremely well, it makes sense that the Finns would try to siphon some of his carries to the younger back. If he can carve out a bigger role than expected next season, Wright has the potential to already be one of the most explosive ball carriers in the league, which seems plausible if the Dolphins continue to lean more on the run game that they've invested so heavily into. If the speed of these players is the fuel that this Dolphins offense runs on, Mike McDaniel's scheme is the engine. This entire scheme, derived from the Shanahan tree, is perfectly designed to maximize every single ounce of speed from every skill position player. Mike McDaniel is a true football genius, although you wouldn't know it by his never-ending goofy post-game outbursts. It's not a coincidence that Miami gathered so many speedsters. McDaniel built this team specifically to function around Tua's biggest strength, which is accuracy on short and intermediate passes. While Tyreek occasionally hits big on a go route, the real plays that chew up yards are the dagger concepts and underneath crossing routes that allow the receivers to create space after the catch. When Tyreek Hill doesn't have the ball in his hands, McDaniel effectively uses him as the best decoy in the NFL, forcing the safeties to play 10 yards deeper and creating pockets all over the field. Not to mention his understanding of how defenses will use outside cushions to lessen the matchup disadvantages, allowing him to call timely outside runs that pierce right through the seam. It's easy to get caught up in the flash of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but Mike McDaniel is the one who makes everything go and gives the Dolphins the potential for point scoring insanity. For example, a 70-point game, which previously hadn't been seen in decades. Just lining up against these guys is difficult enough for defenders, but with the pre-snap motion McDaniel uses on almost every single play, it makes it incredibly confusing to diagnose where the ball is actually going. It also gives players a full running head start before a corner can even backpedal. But let's not just talk about how he's good in theory. Let's talk about how his scheme actually worked. Tua led the NFL in completion percentage in 2022, as the Dolphins finished second in points per game among all teams, only behind the Cowboys. They had everything you can want in offense: the league-leading touchdown scorer, the league-leading wideout, the best wide receiver 2 in the NFL, a rookie who's averaging 7.8 yards per carry, and so on. The Dolphins opened the 2023 season absolutely red hot, winning 5 of their first 6 games and averaging 37 points per game, which includes their 70-point win against the Broncos in Week 3. And while they lost a few games throughout the remainder of the season, they still beat all the teams they should beat. The only problem is they've really struggled to win games against playoff caliber teams. The Miami Dolphins only beat one opponent who finished above 500 last season, and that was the Dallas Cowboys in Week 16. But if all that is true, then what went wrong? All that speed culminated in a 19-56 loss to the Ravens, a 14-21 loss to the Bills, and a 7-26 loss to the Chiefs in the playoffs. After looking at all of these losses, the common denominators are Tua and the defense. In none of these games did Tua have a positive touchdown to interception ratio, and in just one of them did he pass for over 200 yards, throwing for 237 against the Ravens. Looking at just how many passes he completed and how few yards he threw for in those games, his average depth of completion was extremely low. What's worrying is that if Tua isn't stretching the field, he shouldn't be throwing 14 interceptions, which was the 4th most of any quarterback in the league. While normally that would be understandable for a quarterback who led the league in passing yards, Tua isn't really doing most of the work on those stats. It's his receivers getting open and creating big yards after the catch. The other main issue that plagued the Dolphins during their 2023 campaign was their defense. In Miami's 7 losses last year, opposing teams scored 33 points on average, which makes it incredibly difficult to win games. While this seems like it could be a bigger point of blame, the point differential in these games was 18.3, which is absolutely ridiculous. In that case, the average score for a Miami Dolphins loss would be 33-15, which is a failure of both the offense and the defense. Clearly, when Miami got beat, they got beat badly, which signifies some serious issues with game planning when they either get behind or give up turnovers. And I know this seems to be overly critical, but the truth is these problems are only being highlighted because Miami does have the roster talent and coaching to actually make a deep postseason run. They just need to tap into that potential. So that brings us to the main idea here. What is the outlook for the Dolphins in the upcoming season? One important thing to note is that their division is much more difficult with Aaron Rodgers healthy. No longer will the Dolphins get 2 freebies against the Zach Wilson Jets, who they destroyed 30-0 last season. You can still pen them in for 2 wins over the Drake May Patriots, but if we're talking about having a shot at winning the division here, they're going to have to at least split the series against Buffalo. The Finns have a great opportunity to get off on the right foot with their first 2 games of the season at home, with the opener against Jacksonville and Week 2 against the Bills. Don't forget, Miami's home games in the early season are some of the most advantageous in the NFL because of how the sun bakes the opposing sideline, so that could prove important in their early season matchup against Josh Allen. Outside of the division, their schedule is pretty tough, with 6 of their 10 opponents making the playoffs last season. Then, the final month is absolutely brutal, with a run of games that features away at Green Bay, at home against the Jets, away against the Texans, at home against the Niners, and then 2 road games against the Browns and Jets to close it out. December has been the month that Miami never seems to keep it together, so if they can finish strong on this portion of the schedule, they should be set up for great success. Evaluating how they played in 2023 and what their schedule looks like in 2024, I think their absolute ceiling is 13 wins. With Tua playing in a contract year, I think the extra motivation to play well could boost this team to the next level. Last year, they were on historic paces in offense, and if they can figure out how to maintain that over a full season, they will easily be one of the best teams in the NFL. Now, I think the absolute floor, without any major injuries to key players, is 9-8, which would obviously be very disappointing for Dolphins fans. The good news is, in actuality, I think the most likely outcome is between 10-7 and 11-6, which would give them a good chance to win the division and guarantee them a playoff spot. Miami truly has what it takes to put together a championship caliber campaign. It really just comes down to whether or not they can iron out the little issues before January comes around. Everyone says speed kills, but can a team entirely based on speed win a championship? For that, we'll have to wait and see. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.